Good morning, it's Christopher Taylor with Sovereign Harmony up on the hill. It is Sunday morning at about dawn here in Southern California. It's October 26th. We're going to do the astrology for October 26th right on through November 1st. So we're getting into November already. So lots of bigger scale things to talk about this week. Okay, so last week, if you were with me, we had the new moon in Libra that was squaring Jupiter and Chiron, the square between those. That's going to come up later this week with Venus. We'll talk about that. We also had Mercury entering the shadow zone for its retrograde. Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year for about 3 weeks. It's going to go retrograde November 9th to the 29th, starting from 6 degrees Sagittarius and retrograding back to 20 degrees Scorpio. So that zone between 20 degrees Scorpio and 6 degrees Sagittarius is what's known as the Mercury shadow. So Mercury entered that shadow last week, and that'll be in that shadow through about mid-December. Okay, what's also starting this week that's more longer term is a trine between Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn in Pisces in the late degrees. Okay, that's going to be with us essentially throughout the whole month of November, starting this week, and then ending in early December. So pretty much the entire time of Mercury's shadow zone, we're going to have this Jupiter trine to Saturn in the water signs, okay? And that all plays together when we look at it. So just as a little quick astrology review in general, we have personal planets, which are the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. We have societal planets, Jupiter and Saturn, which are kind of like the boundary between the personal and the evolutionary planets being the outer planets, which are Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, okay? And with what's coming up here in the spring, we have the Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees Aries in February. And what that's also doing is pulling in a sextile to Uranus in Gemini, as well as a sextile to Pluto in Aquarius. So all 3 evolutionary planets are in play, with Saturn anchoring it all in the middle with Neptune. So that's why it's a new stage of societal evolution. Okay, we are in this goo phase with that Jupiter Chiron square that I mentioned the last couple weeks, where we're between the caterpillar and the butterfly. The butterfly comes after that conjunction. Okay, so within this goo phase, we are doing things on 2 levels, on a personal level as well as an evolutionary level. Okay, so this Mercury retrograde is extremely important, and that Jupiter-Saturn trine is extremely important at helping create a nice little boundary or divide between those 2. So on a personal level, it started here on Friday, Saturday. We had the moon, one of the personal planets, that was in Scorpio, forming a watergrandtrine to Jupiter and Saturn. Okay, then we had Mercury on Friday and Saturday doing the same thing. Now Mercury, because it's going to go to 6 degrees Sag and move back again, it's going to make that same aspect 3 times. This is the first one it made on Friday and Saturday. It'll do it again and then finish up in early to mid-December, right as the Jupiter-Saturn trine is breaking up. Okay, so we have this parade of personal planets. So on a personal level, we are purging, we are cleansing. I've used the term power hose, like a power wash, right? But another analogy could be like just a washing machine, because we have all 3 water signs, okay, forming this triangle around the zodiac, a nice smooth flow of water. So it's almost like getting churned in a washing machine. Okay, at the end of the wash, we're going to be cleaner, we're going to be better, but it's a little stressful within that wash period, right? So think of it like that. So we had it starting with the personal planets on Friday with the moon, and then Friday and Saturday with Mercury opening it up. Now this week, Monday to Wednesday time frame, we have Mars, another personal planet. So on a personal level, we're talking about our action. We're digging in, we're excavating, and we're figuring out, what has prevented our action before. What are those things we've got to like really purge so that we can move forward. Okay, so that comes into play here this week. Okay, and then when we get into mid to late November, that is when we're going to have the Sun in Scorpio forming that watergrandtrine as well, and then even the moon will come back, and there'll be a new moon in Scorpio that'll essentially be part of that watergrandtrine, and then it'll finish with, I think on the 21st of November is when Venus will be the final personal planet that will be there before Mercury comes back around and finishes it up in December. So on a personal level, from this last week of October right on through the first couple of weeks of December, we're again in this washing machine phase, really rinsing out, really getting to the bottom of things so that we can align our thoughts, our actions, our hearts, and our souls with what we came here to do, which is going to be more clear when we get on the other side of that February conjunction between Saturn and Neptune at 0 degrees Aries. And you can think of that as bridging the gap between society, Saturn, and evolution Neptune and the other evolutionary planets that it's bringing into play with that conjunction. So we really are at this kind of bridge phase right now. Now, on an evolutionary side, this Mercury retrograde is also activating that, because Mercury, as it crosses from Scorpio into Sag and back, it's going to be over that transect between the end of Scorpio and beginning of Sagittarius, it's going to form aspects to all 3 evolutionary planets. Okay, so it's going to form an opposition to Uranus, which is going to be in Gemini, the first one it makes this week. But then when Uranus retrogrades back into Taurus, it's going to form that opposition to Taurus from Scorpio the next couple of passes in November and December. Okay, it's also going to sextile Pluto in Aquarius while it's in Sagittarius, and it's going to form a trine to Neptune, which is now back in Pisces, so from late Scorpio. Okay, so all 3 evolutionary planets getting hit by this Mercury retrograde. So it's highlighting the evolutionary planets as well as some setting the stage for the personal planets to all form this watergrandtrine to the Jupiter-Saturn trine that is from Jupiter in Cancer to Saturn in Pisces. And the big theme of that essentially is to say on both a personal and societal and evolutionary level to really deal with reality. That's Saturn at the late degrees of Pisces. So don't cloak over deceptions. It's like, it's correcting the deceptions, okay? And Jupiter in Cancer wants emotional growth. So we're going through this purge period so that as a society, we can all be personally ready for what is about to be born here, what we're about to create together here, really, okay? So it's a big deal, but it's spread out. So it's not, this is just all initiating here this week. But again, it's through about early to mid-December when this energy is all kind of complete. And at that point, we're only going to have about 2 months until that conjunction between Saturn and Neptune at 0 degrees Aries. And if you're not familiar, the last Saturn-Neptune conjunction was in 1989 in Capricorn. That was when the Berlin Wall fell. It was that boundary between the Cold War and what we've been in, which is the globalism, the corporatocracy, corporations and government working together. So that is really what's going to break down this time. So think of like if the Berlin Wall was separating left and right, the left and right paradigms, that came down in 89. Now in 2026, we have the wall between the power up top and the people down below. That's going to crumble, okay? So this whole, the idea of power coming back to the people, and that's really thematic with Pluto and Aquarius. The idea of Uranus and Gemini and information being more freely available, things we're not supposed to know that we do come to know. Okay, so all that's coming. And we're prepping for it on a personal level, and then so that we can be ready on a societal level to deal with that. So really important the next several weeks to really dig in. And we're going to have experiences in our lives that pop in that we don't want necessarily. Okay, but if we see them through that lens, we realize, this is a sort of a grand finale for me for this theme that I thought I was past, but maybe I'm not quite past yet. So it's an ultimate time for healing and moving on. Okay, so that's really, if we want to take personal responsibility for that. And then finally, later in this week, I already mentioned we had the new moon in Libra last week, about 5 days ago on the 21st, and that was highlighting the square between Jupiter and Chiron, which has to do with emotional growth through vulnerability. So this gets highlighted again because Venus is going to now take the position of where the sun was and the moon was during that new moon. So it's kind of layering that same experience on a deeper level. So it's the idea, again, of stimulating this sense of growing emotionally by being vulnerable. And of course, if we're in this washing machine situation, as we are, we're in a pretty vulnerable state, okay? So it's all well-timed. It all is what it is, and it's going to, complete as it needs to complete. And we just got to take our responsibility for it and be ready for what's coming, because this is a big deal coming up. So we'll leave it there. So if you have any questions, please let me know. If you're looking for a personal consultation where these are, where these planetary motions are occurring in your chart, we can do that. Just let me know. Other than that, enjoy your week and look to my YouTube channel for the monthly update, November. I'll have that coming up this week as well. Other than that, have a good week, have a good weekend, and we'll see you later.